I mean, talking about sort of relevance of today, what sort of advice would you give to any budding games or board games designer in terms of building their own intellectual property, aka IP? What
You're
would you
talking board games or video games?
both, either?
Well, but there's been board games first. There's been a huge resurgence in board games, thanks largely, I think, to crowdfunding. Kickstarter has been an amazing platform for games being made that would not ordinarily have been made, because the retail games, board games retail kind of disappeared. I mean, with Workshop, we ended up we changed direction significantly by not stocking general board games after a while, and then not stocking other people's games. All Workshop stock was its own IP. So obviously Warhammer dominated the shops and Citadel Miniatures and White Dwarf magazine. So the retail kind of disappeared for general games. And then a lot of people turned to video games. Therefore, the existing board games market kind of got hit quite hard. But the desire to play board games never went away. And suddenly a lot better type of game was being designed, mainly from Germany, so Euro games as they're called. At the same time, the Essen Games Fair held every October. The numbers were going up and up and up. And I went last year, and they had over 200,000 people there, 1,500 new games. So there's clearly a market for games that required a certain amount of skill to play, not just relying on the rolling of the dice. So Kickstarter has enabled inventors to get, through effectively a pre-sale, their games funded, and then having access of delivery to the people who bought it. So it's bypassing the traditional distribution channel, which was great, because when people used to make their own games, a designer would decide to make their own games, they print 5,000 copies, of which 4,950 were in their garage because they had no outlet for them. So there's a lot of sad cases of people who made their own games. And also Kickstarter kind of, in a way, validates your idea, because if you get funded, clearly it's a great idea and people want it. And if it doesn't get funded, maybe your idea wasn't so great after all.
Yeah.
So for board games in general, there's been a huge uptick because of Kickstarter. And then there's been another publisher, Asmodee, headquartered in France, have come along, who've ended up buying all the indies and allowed them to retain their label, but have injected a lot of capital into the space. And then Hasbro saw the opportunities. They bought Wizards of the Coast, and with Wizards of the Coast came Dungeons and Dragons, because D&D got acquired by Wizards a long time ago. So the whole ecosystem for board games has been great. So that's a big plus. For video games, I don't think there's been a better time than today for indies to be successful. Again, talking about distribution channels, because games as a service and free at the point of delivery, games developers are able to reach a global market through digital access and upsell content from there. So if you have a product or a service, you can monetize the entire globe effectively. In the old days, when in the IDOS days in particular, and when you had physical media, you had to upfront all the development costs and then incur massive marketing costs with a product, which then had to navigate the distribution channel, getting convinced buyers to take them, to put them into shelves, to pay effectively to be on the shelves, and after 3 months they came off the shelves. If that game wasn't as good as you thought it was going to be, there's nothing you could do about it, because a fixed product is a fixed physical product. And you had to deal with it with returns and inventory management. So it was a nightmare process. So you had to go through the various gatekeepers, and you could lose an awful lot of money having sunk so much money upfront in development and marketing and distribution before we saw $1 of revenue. But today, of course, it's a business to consumer proposition. Therefore, you can go direct to your customer base, build a relationship with that customer, and over time your game runs as a service, and you can upsell content, and you can improve that product over time. It's not a fixed piece of media as it was in the disc days. Therefore, you can improve the game itself, and of course improve monetization through data. So the model is a lot more suited to to developers of today to be independent than it was ever was available in the old days. We had to rely on publisher financing to get to market.
Ian, your sort of idea, your intellect, your ideas, your IP, your worlds that you've created have transcended now books, toys, video games, and board games. You know, for someone who's coming up with ideas and wants to build a world, which of those mediums do you think is the sort of, was your favorite when it was coming to, you know, building your intellectual property?
Well, they're all wonderful in their own way. I mean, I don't have a preference of video games over board games over books, but you know, each moment was, you know, the day we opened our first Games Workshop store was a big moment. The day, you know, our first Fighting Fantasy game board, the Warlock of Attack Mountain, appeared on the shelves of W.H. Smith was a big moment. You know, launching Tomb Raider was a big moment. I mean, there's joy to be had in every aspect of games, I'd say, and that's, you know, that's turning a creative idea into a product that other people want is a very satisfying experience. So there's no right or wrong in what you should do. You should do, you have to find your own passion. So I can't dictate what that might be, but you have to do what you enjoy or do something else.